Hello and welcome back. This is Michael Williams, the founder of the Start Speaking Training Center, and we are working through this brand new program that I've just released called the Power Coach Approach, and that is how you can become your own personal speaking coach. And you can coach yourself in anything else too, but we're talking about how to become an excellent speaker, and you can certainly apply this information to other areas, such as if you are an anxious person, or you have public anxiety, or you just want to become a better speaker, or if you're a stutterer or a stammerer, you can use this program to help you there. Today, we are going to be looking at control. Now, not so much self-control, but we're going to be talking about control and how that directly impacts your ability to, and your confidence and your esteem, and your ability to speak fluently. Okay, so let's talk about control, and what do I mean by control? Well, let's just look at this. The more control you have over your situation and over yourself, the better you feel about yourself, the better you feel about life. And the better you feel about life, chances are it's because you have greater control over your life. So people who have less control, something called locus of control, people who have less control over their time and their job and their money don't feel as good often as people who have more control over their time and their job and what they do. So even in a company where you have someone who's micromanaged, that's why many people don't like to be micromanaged, because they don't have as much control over their tasks, over their time, over their functionality, over their creativity. They're being controlled, so they don't feel real good about their job, about what they're doing, and sometimes it impacts their self-esteem and their life in general. The greater control that they are given, and certainly one has to be responsible, but the greater control that they're given, often the better they feel about their job and about themselves and so forth. Well, it's the same here with speaking. It's the same here. That the more control you feel like you have over your speaking situations, that is, when you have to speak, where you have to speak, and what you have to say, the more control you feel you have over that, the more confident you are, the calmer you are, the more comfortable you are, right? The more courageous you become, because you feel like you have control over it. Now, as you progress through this program, you'll probably need to have less control, because you'll be able to say whatever you want, whenever you want. Now, I'm not saying you should say whatever you want, wherever you want, but certainly you'll be able to, right? So you'll need to have less control. But as you're beginning this approach, you'll probably need to have a great sense of control over your speaking situations. Okay, Michael, what does that mean? Control over my speaking situations. Well, let me give you an example. When I first graduated college many years ago, one of the first jobs I got, and I stuttered at that time. I mean, I was able to speak and to communicate, but I would stammer, and I felt the headaches and so forth. One of the first jobs I got, as you may have heard before, was working on the telephone. And I hated talking on the telephone, but it was the best job I could get at that time. So here I am, I have to work on the telephone. Well, I was frightened, but I was pretty self-confident, and I figured I was going to figure out a way to do it or not, right? So I had to go through a training program. Oh boy, I hate training programs. I had to go in there, and we had to practice saying certain things on the phone with people watching us and recording us. It was an absolute nightmare. It was a nightmare. But I did it, and here's how I did it. One of the things I did to relieve the pressure is I told the instructor right off the bat, sometimes I stutter. Sometimes I stutter. Now notice, I didn't say I'm a stutterer. And I'm going to talk about this at the end of the program. Let me mention it here. Do not identify yourself as a stutterer or a stammerer. Okay? I know maybe you've been taught to do that, to accept the fact that you stutter. And I'm all for accepting the fact that right now you stutter sometimes, or even if you stutter all the time, that's not going to be the case in the very near future. But it's nothing wrong with accepting the fact that you do stutter, but I don't want you to identify yourself as a stutterer. See, there's a difference between the act and the behavior of stuttering or stammering and being a stutterer or stammerer. That is, identifying yourself as a stutterer or stammerer, as taking on the behavior as who you are. You are not a stutterer or stammerer. So your potential is to be an excellent speaker. It just so happens that you stutter and stammer now, perhaps, or you have speaking anxiety. Even if it is genetic, you still don't have to exhibit the behaviors. So don't identify yourself as a stutterer. If you need to, and sometimes I encourage you to, you may say, sometimes I stutter or stammer, and you may never do it. In that situation, you may not do it, or you might. But when you identify and say, hey, sometimes I stutter or I stammer, so if I get stuck a little bit, that's the reason why. You skip over me, or I'll work through it, or something like that. It kind of relieves the pressure, right? But that's different than saying I'm a stutterer, because then if you do that, then you continue to take that identity with you for the indefinite future. I'm a stutterer, I'm a stutterer. No, those are negative affirmations. You're an excellent speaker or you're becoming an excellent speaker who sometimes stutters. Everyone stutters sometimes, right? We may stutter a little more, but we're becoming an excellent speaker. That's going away. So, back to the control factor. Is that one of the things that I did in my training, as I said, sometimes I stutter, and I may need to move some words around so that I can say this, right? A lot of pressure, a lot of stress, but I was able to make it through by putting that disclaimer out there, taking the pressure off myself. And then the second thing I did is, because there were certain words that I had a difficult time saying, like hello, right? I would say, yes, hello. Or I would say, this is Michael Williams. And I know I've said that before in some of the in the 6 power speaking techniques, something that I released a while back. And some people call that avoidance. That's not a power technique, that's avoidance. Well, James Earl Jones said that he had problems with certain consonants. So what would he do? Avoid them. It's just simply avoid them. Don't say it. Say something else. There'd be times when he could say it, but he would just say something else. So as you're going through this transformation process, control your situations, which in part means avoiding certain words. Sometimes it means avoiding certain situations, right, while you are transforming. So you're going to get to a point where you don't need to avoid certain words or consonants or vowels or certain things. You are going to get there, but until you get there, you need to create as many successful speaking situations as possible, which means controlling your speaking situation and avoiding certain words and certain situations that are going to put stress on you, that may embarrass you, which may happen anyway, but put stress on you and cause you to spiral down. See, I did it again, I can't say it, and there you go, right? We don't want to do that. We want to build on your successes, which means if I can't say hello, then I'm not going to say hello. I'm going to say yes, hello. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what any therapist says. And I'm not saying that therapists don't give good, solid advice. In fact, there are many therapists and psychologists and psychiatrists who are giving you good, solid advice, some of which you hear here, and are telling you to do things that will work for you. But whenever someone tells you not to avoid, you have to take that with a grain of salt and understand that in the short term, you may need to avoid. I'm not saying avoid all the time, but you may need to avoid in the short term, and here's why. As I avoided saying hello, and maybe I said yes, hello, or I said this is Michael Williams when I'm answering the phone, what it did is it gave me peace. I was more calm, I was more comfortable, more self-confident that I can speak. I just don't have to say hello. I can say yes, hello, which is fine, right? So it created success. And then that success just built upon itself. Each time I was able to answer the phone successfully, I stopped thinking of myself as a stutterer because I could answer the phone. Before, if I thought I had to say hello, then I was like, I have to say hello, I can't answer the phone because I stutter. Do you see where I'm going with this? All right, so one way then is to control your speaking situations by avoiding or changing or substituting certain words and phrases. There's been times where the other problem that I had was reading in public. So what would I do? I would tell, if I was in a class, if I have to say pass, it's because sometimes I stutter. I was taking a Hebrew class and a Greek class. Told my professors that sometimes I stutter, so I may not be able to read this. Most of the time I could. Every now and then I had to pass, right? And so that took the pressure off. Now, what would I do? Well, there would be times, maybe not in Greek and Hebrew, but when I had to read in public, I would come to a word and I would get stuck, and I would just skip the word or substitute something else for it and then keep right on going, right? And I do it dramatically so people wouldn't necessarily know. Even if they were reading along with me, I would just substitute that word and just keep right on going, okay? And so sometimes you have to do that. And as a person who stutters or stammers, your mind is very quick. You learn how to do things very quickly, okay? So you might have to substitute, but don't stop. Don't go, and then you're done. Then you're done. Just skip over it and go, and substitute another word. Even skip a sentence if you have to. Do whatever you need to do, but keep going. Make it successful. Now, that is very important, because the more successes you have, then the more successes you will have, because you'll be building on those successes. The other thing with control that you'll find is that as you work through your rehearsals and you're practicing, you're going to create a foundation of success. And so, as I said in the very beginning, you will need to control your situations less and less and less. And it may take you a year or 2 years before you can kind of release the control. It could take you 3 years or 5 years. But the control will slowly begin to be released the more you move through the program. That's why the practice sessions and the rehearsals are so important, because it gives you success. It gives you success. And then you start to believe and have confidence in yourself. I can do this. I can read in public, right? And so the more you do that, the more you believe you can do it. So control is a very important factor. And when I say control, sometimes it's going to mean avoiding certain words, certain letters, substituting other words or putting another word before, like when I say yes, hello. If that doesn't work for you, find something else that makes sense, that sounds good, and say that. When you're on the phone, and the phone sometimes can be kind of tough. I'm not sure why. Sometimes I guess it's because you have to respond to someone right then. There's just a timing issue there, and it builds some stress or something. But when you're speaking on the phone, that can be kind of tough. And so you just have to work through that, get on the conversation, yes, hello, try to breathe, try to relax, try to get into a rhythm when you speak on the phone. Once again, use that modeling, don't just talk on the phone. Maybe you might have to almost act like you're doing a little presentation when you're talking on the phone. Sometimes I still struggle in terms of pausing when I'm on the phone. So that's something that you'll still need to work through, but controlling means substituting, sometimes avoiding, until you can do it well. It also means letting people know when you feel like you need to, that sometimes you might stutter. Don't identify yourself as a stutterer. Just sometimes I might stutter or I might pause, and so if you wouldn't mind if I say pass, just keep going. Now I know in an interview, if you're interviewing for a job, you can't say, well, pass, because you're there to do the interview. So my advice to you would be to practice. If you've done some interviews before, write the questions, write down your responses, practice those interview situations until you can do it in your sleep. So you can do it in your sleep. Visualize, which we're going to talk about in the TAP approach. Visualize you successfully going through interviews, okay? And once again, as you move through this program and you practice and you do the affirmations every day, day in and day out, and you visualize and you go over those things slowly, you'll start to see where you are more successful in interviews and in speaking and giving presentations. Guaranteed, as you continue to work through it. All right, so today we have looked at control. We've talked about what that is, talked about sometimes avoiding things or substituting things. In our next session, we're going to jump into the TAP approach, which I talked about in the last session. We're going to jump right into it. I consider that to be the building on top of the foundation which we've gone through over the last few sessions. So this is going to be the meat of the program. So I hope to see you there. This is Michael Williams, founder of the Start Speaking Training Center, and may God bless you.